Hello, welcome to this video training. I will talk to you about new 4D V18 features that will help you with your application deployment and your deployed applications. My name is Damien Fuseau. I'm a product owner at 4D since February 2019. I developed with 4D since 1997. In my former job, I was a developer and a software architect for a software publisher, which was a 4D OEM partner. And we deployed hundreds of servers for thousands of users. So naturally, now I'm mainly working on features from OEM requests, on features for development improvement and deployment improvements. So what we will talk about? We have 5 subjects. The first is the custom login dialog, how to make your own custom login dialog. The user and groups management in projects, the settings related to data file, how to make your application headless, and some miscellaneous tips. The first subject is the custom login dialog. Several use cases are resolved with this feature, which is modifying the 4D client building dialog. First use case is to customize the integrated 4D client connection dialog. You all will know this dialog that appears when the server is not available or when you hold the shortcuts. So final user has to enter the network settings, and final user hates enter network settings. So you may want to customize this dialog. This is the first use case. A second one is to access different 4D servers with the same 4D client application. In previous versions, if you had several 4D servers, usually you used to have a 4D client for each 4D server, or you allow the final user to switch server entering network settings, but he hates entering network settings. So this feature allow you to have only 4D client application to connect to one or several 4D servers. The third use case is to manage user authorization before connection to 4D server. In many cases, you have to ask for an external entity for authorization to connect to the server. So the client application call the authorization entity, and when he has access, then he can connect to 4D server. This is some use cases. I think you can imagine other use cases with this feature. So, what you should know about this feature. The Open Database command can use a 4D link file. A 4D link file contains information about structure, data file, and opening mode, but it can also have information about the 4D server connection, its IP address, its publication port. You can use a 4D link file to connect to a 4D server. This is the 4D server connection. And now we allow a merge 4D client application to embed a database which will be executed at startup. Why we did that? Because only merge client application can connect to a merge server. So we can't use a single user merge application to connect to a 4D server. So we have allowed the developer to integrate its own connection database into for the client application, and when this application startups, it connects, it's open the database, and the connection database then can connect to a 4D server. So how can I do this? I have first to develop a connection application. So you can imagine all the scenarios you want. You have second to embed this compiled application into the client target application, and then just have to deploy the application. Just a word about the updates, automatic updates for the server. This behavior is still available. So when your connection application will connect to the 4D server, a run checking will be done as usual, and if your client application is out of the range, the update is automatically done from the 4D server. So I will show you a demo, and I will now explain you the context of the demo. I have a client application which needs to connect to several contact database. I imagine that a company has several 4D servers serving context databases, maybe one database per subsidiaries, and a client application wants to connect to one or other 4D server application. So the question is, how can I do that? I imagine a system with a directory server. Each contact database will send a keep alive information to the directory server through HTTP requests, and they will send every X seconds I'm alive, and the directory server will keep the list of available servers, and if a server didn't send a request from a long time, it will mark the server as unavailable. So this is the systems. All my context databases send a request to the directory application. Second step, my connection applications will get the server available list from the directory database using HTTP request. So it allows to show the list of available servers, and then the final user we can choose one of the servers. It's the first step. The user chooses the server he wants to connect to, and he can use the entire application. So let's see it on the demo. The demo is very simple. It's made up of 3 databases. I will show you a little bit code. The first is the directory application. It's a web server, so there's no interface. The main method is the on web connection. It will catch the request, and there are 2 functions available: the publish availability function and the get servers function. The get servers function will be used by the connection application to get all available servers, which are stored in a collection in the storage.servers connection. And then all all contacts for the servers will send some requests about their availability, and it will be catch with publish availability method. It's very simple. We recover all parameters of the core stream, and then we'll check in the existing collection if the server already exists, and if not, we push the server. If it exists, it updates the last registration attributes, which is the timestamp. So very simple. Oh, I also have a turning process. Here is the turning process. It will check all the servers and check if it has sent requests from the last 5 seconds. If it doesn't, it removes the server from the list. Very, very simple database. So the second is the connection application. So it's the application that you use to connect to your 4D server. It's also simple. A list box, which is listing all available servers with their name, IP, and port, how it's made. And if I double click on the line, it connects to the server. So my dialog is here. It's this box is binded to the form.servers collection. The form.servers collection comes from the getServers method, which is a call to the directory server, and we just get the servers collection, and we put it in the form.servers collection. So very simple too. And on double click, I use the connect to server method, which is also very simple. I build the 4D link file. I build an XML setting is remote attribute to true to say I am a remote application. The server database name, and then the server path with the selected server IP and the selected server port. Very simple. I create the 4D link file with a folder command, and then I use open database with the 4D link file. And at this time, the application connects to the 4D server. Very simple. The only thing you have to do now is to compile the application, and then to build the application, the compiled structure. So you build compile structure, check this checkbox, and build the application. Then it's all for that. When you have built your application, it's placed in this folder. So just have to remember the folder for the next step. The main application is the contacts database. So I open it. It displays a list of contacts. Very simple. Here is the current database and the number of records. It's very simple, but if you build a client-server application as this, it will build a client application. As usual, this client application will connect directly to the 4D server. What we have to do now is to embed the connection application into the 4D client application. So for this, you can use a build app file. I have this method to build application with a special build application file, the build app connection. And I'll show you this file. So this file has two new nodes, which are database to embed in client Mac folder, and the same for the Windows folder. So you have just to set the folder where your compiled connection application is placed. Just do this. And then you build your connection application. So I close the database, but I will show you the difference between the two clients application. The legacy contacts client application, when you see in the database folder, you have engine server for the link, and if you open it, you will see that it will connect to a contact database on a server which is published on this port, and it's checking all IPs. So it's the legacy behavior, but the contact client database that I just built with the with the connect application is different, because in the database you can see you have a database which will be executed at startup. So what's the result? I will launch my directory server. So I hide it, no interest. I run my first contact. I run my second contact server, and then my third contact server. Okay, so set user tab. So just to see the users. So when I use my contacts client, as I said, it will run first the connection application, so the connecting dialog. The dialog check from the directory server all the server available, and you have the list. And then if I double click on one, I can connect to. You can see there's one user, it's me, and I can use the application as usual. And I am with contact one. There is 100 records. Very simple. I can redo this connecting to the second server. So I'm connected to the second server with 200 records, and I see on the administration window that I'm connected to this server. Maybe you have saw that in the connection application, build application, have checked the compiled structure, but I also checked the component checkbox, and it's an easy way to switch servers without closing the application and opening the application. So I have called the component in this button. So every time I can check the server and switch from the server from the application. So it's a funny way to switch servers. I'm on the third. And if I want to reconnect to the first, it's very simple. No need to close the application and reopen it. And what happened when a server closed? Maybe the server 2. Okay, I close it. And I can see in the list, I wait for 5 seconds, and then the server disappears. So this is this feature allowing you to build your own connection application and imagine several use cases, several strategies to connect to your 3D servers. Back to the slides for the second subject about the user and groups management in project database. So project database are based on text files. So we had to store the user and groups also in text files. And this way, there's no more need to protect the code by user and groups because the files are showable by everyone. So the code protection has to be delegated to the system when you are in single user mode. And if you have to differentiate user on a single user application, per example, you can use the set user alias command. So some reminders. In client server, the user and groups management is fully available. You can create users, set them to groups, allow rights to groups, and make all you made with binary databases. In single user, there's some difference because the user and groups management is deactivated. So the current user is always the designer account. So if you want to differentiate users, as I said on the previous slide, you can use a set user alias command. But in single user, you still can use the user and groups toolbox to set the user and groups which will be used in a client server. So the user and groups are stored in the directory JSON file. So this file contains a description for the groups, the groups rights, and the users, the passwords, and the group's membership. The passwords are encrypted. The directory JSON file is located in the settings folder. But as you know, we have two settings folder. The settings folder near the structure or near the data file. So, and if you have a directory JSON file in both locations, the one near the data file is used. So it's the way it is your deployment because you have no need to store your users in groups before making updates. And so in deployed application, the file is containing user and group, as I said. So you don't have to update the user and groups before your update process and restore them after the update process. And in binary databases, if you use user and groups in your database, you use to store the user and groups in a blob and to retrieve them from the blob after the update. So it's still available to use the blob to users command to create user and groups but in the directory JSON file. Take care if you want to have user and groups based on your deployed application. Don't forget to integrate the user and groups file in your build application after the process, because if you have no directory JSON file nor in the structure settings folder, nor in the data settings folder, only the designer and the administrator account will be available. They are always available, even there's no file. And the designer will be the current user by default. So the application will be run with all rights because he is the designer. So if you want to restrict accesses or rights, don't forget to integrate your directory JSON file into your application after build. So let's go to the demonstration. So the demonstration database is very simple. It's an interpreted database, but it's the same behavior in compiled databases or merge application. So I will show you in a simple way. So I open my database. It's only displaying the users list. So I have a designer, the administrator, and 2 developers. So this list of users comes from the settings folder near the project, and here is the directory JSON file. So I can open it if you want to take a look. It contains users, groups, and with users in groups, and some accesses and parameters. So no need to check how it's made, but just remind that it is in this file. So what happened when I place the directory JSON file in the settings folder near the data file? So my data is in this folder. The settings folder has no directory JSON. So I place the file in this directory, and I will launch my database. And then you can see you have different users. The users that are stored in the directory JSON in the settings folder near the data file. So when you process your updates, you have no more need to save your users and to restore your users after the update. It's easier for deployment. And the users management is still available. As I said, the file near the data is used first, and if we edit access, I create a user, for example, and I can see that it has stored it in the directory JSON file near the data. I became Martin, yeah, but not the directory JSON which is near the structure. So that's all for this demo. Back to the slides for the third subject, which is the settings related to data file. I remind you that it's best practice to put your data folder outside the package or outside the application folder. Because in deployment, you have to make your package or application folder untouched. So we did some changes in V18 to make the package of the application folder untouched if you place your data outside the package. We have just seen one of them is the user and groups file in the directory JSON file, which can be placed near in the settings folder near the data file. In the same way, we have now a backup settings file. It's named backup.folly settings file, and it's located in the settings folder near the structure or near the data file. And in the same way than we made with the user and groups file, if you have a settings file in both locations, the one near the data is used. So when you deploy your application, just put your data file outside the package in a place, and then it will be untouched during update processes. There's some changes about the backup because in former versions the backup.xml file contained the settings and the history of the backups. So from now there are two files. The backup.folly settings file only contains settings, and now you have a backup history JSON file which will contain only execution history in a collection. So each item of a collection is a backup. It's a better way to separate this information. The backup.xml file, which will be automatically converted when you use V18, and it will be named backup.folly settings, but it's the file placed near the structure. So if you want to have settings related to the data, place the backup.folly settings file in the settings folder near the data file. I remind you, all the backup files are easily retrievable with the file command. With you can use some constants, just as if I remember, backup log file and backup settings file. So it's a better way to access this file. Second, related to data files, not really settings file, but it makes the package untouched. It's the log folder. The logs folder is now located near the data file to make your package or application folder untouched. So you can easily retrieve it with the command folder, and it's a better way to retrieve it. There's some exception, 3 exceptions about the verifying, the repairing, and the compacting logs, which are located in the system folder, because these actions can be made in the MSC without data file. So if we haven't a data file, we don't know where to place the log folder. So for these logs, they are stored in the system, but you can easily retrieve them with the file command and the constants I have written it. The verification log file, the repair log file, and the compacting log file. So, a little demonstration. So the demo database is very simple. Open it. About the backup, the settings for the structure In these settings, I only backup the structure and no attachments. So when I backup the database, it creates my 4dbk file and the backup history file. You can take a look. So there's a backup with all information, the starting, the end, the duration, and no attachments. Okay, so is the case when my backup for the settings is near the structure. But if you see in my data folder, the settings folder has no backup .4d settings file. So I place one in the folder and then I will launch my database. I can see the settings stored in the file. So I have chosen to backup my data and the data index and the settings folder. It's the best way to set the settings folder. So when I backup my database, I have a second backup, and in my history, I can see the second backup with information, and then I have my two attachments. So it has taken into account the settings near the data file. So it's the best way to do. You have to activate the security tab, enable user settings in external file. So you have to activate this checkbox and have your data outside the package. So if you go to the backup tab, you can see a new label. It's to remind you that you are using settings for data file. So the settings you are modifying right there are not the currently settings, so there won't be taken into account for the next backup, only if you create a data file and this data file has no settings. Okay, for the backup, and you can see the log folder which is placed here. I just activated the debug logs, and you can see the log folder there. Back to the slides for the headless mode. So what is the headless mode? An application running in headless mode is an application without any interface. You may say, why having an application without interface? Is the case when you develop a robot, for example, or a service. And talking about service, it was already the case in previous 4D versions. When you were running your 4D server as a service on Windows, your server was running without any interface. But in the new feature, we have caught and logged the blocking dialogues in a file. So you won't wonder anymore why my application is not responding anymore. Because the blocking dialogues will be caught, and the execution will continue. So it's a better way to use headless mode. And we have extended the behavior to all 4D applications, not only for 4D server, because if you want to develop a bot, for example, you don't have to use a 4D server. That's not necessary. Oh, from now, when you use a Windows service, the application is in headless mode. So it runs as a headless mode. You have two modes, headless and faithful. So to run in headless an application for macOS, use the command line interface with -headless option. So take care about the demo. There's a space between the two hyphens, but when you type it, there's no space. Just type -headless. The get application info command has a new attribute which is called headless. It's a boolean which which is set to tell you if you are in headless mode or not. So you can develop your code differently if you are in headless mode or faithful. And when your application is executing in headless mode, the diagnostic log is automatically activated. And why? Because when we intercept the dialogues, we store this information in the diagnostic log. So it's automatically activated. And the interceptions are logged with a .hdls tag, so you can retrieve it easily in the diagnostic log file. Okay, we will see that in a demo. So I could run my database as usual, but I will run it in command line. So the command line is quite long, but it's very easy. I run my 4D application with a full path with my project. So only that, I run it. So my database is loaded. It's very simple. I have only one method with many dialogues which will be displayed. So if I run my method, I see alert, confirm, request, opening file, and an error dialog. So if this method is run in headless, your application before V18, your application will be blocked because the alert is displayed, and you can't interact with the application. You can't click on the OK button. So it wasn't easy to use. So from now, just take a look on the unstartup method. I use the headless attribute, and if I am in headless mode, I launch my run dialogues method. So I quit my database, and right now I launch it in headless mode, -headless. You don't see anything, the goal. So you just see that in Activity Monitor you have 4D application is running, and if we take a look on the log folder, we can see that the diagnostic log has been created, and if I take a look into it, there's many lines because the 4D has got many dialogues. You can see the HDS tag, And there was an alert command with alert test label, and you have the entire call chain, so you can see where the code has been called with each steps. So you can see the alert, the confirm, the request, the choose file, and the error dialog. So it's easy to see in deployed application uh, which part of your code has been executed in headless, and it shouldn't have been executed in headless because it displayed a dialog. So you can modify your code depending on the headless state. Okay, and if you want to stop your application, just go to quit, and it quits the application in a normal way. It executes and shut down run exit database method. So that's all for this demo. The subject is some miscellaneous tips. Some tips that will help you with your deployed application to know what happened. The first one is the error catching. Um, it's very important to know in your deployed application where error occurred because you have nothing on the application, so it's very important to retrieve error occurred in the application. So I remind you that setting an error call method on the beginning of your process or workers is a very best practice. And in V18, we have added a command which will help you to determine what happened. It's the get call chain command. It allows you to detail where the error occurred with the entire method stack, and you will have each step. And it's very useful to retrieve from where was running your method and where an error occurred. So it's very useful. But don't use this command to make development depending on the place you were running the code. It's not a good practice. So only use it for errors. It's a good way. Um, The second is the runtime explorer. Sometimes you may want to access some information on your deployed applications, and you may want to see processes, the logs, some information that are placed in the runtime explorer. And if you use the user and settings, user and groups, sorry, in your application, only the designer has had access to Runtime Explorer. So from V18, the Runtime Explorer is now accessible for all users belonging to the group with Access Design. So we have renamed the label Design Access to Design and Runtime Explorer Access. So if your user belongs to the group having access, it will have access on the deployed application. So it's a good way to see what happened on your deployed application. You can create a special user and switch to that user to see what happened. And the last tips is about the current user. In many developments, you use your own user management, and you don't use the 4D user management. So maybe you have a generic user account, a generic 4D user account, and all your users use this account. So this name is written in many logs, so you can't retrieve who did what. So we have developed the set user alias command for this needs. You can set the name during the session, the name of the user. So if you have many users sharing the same 4D user account, you can rename each session with your own name. It may be the user of your database management. It can be an LDAP user, something else, a system user, something you like. The alias is used in many ways in 4D. It replaces the username. It replaces by default with the current user command. If you set an alias, the current user command returns the alias. In the server administration window, you can see for the user, and now you can see the aliases. And in the database journal file, it's very important because you can know now which user did the actions of the database operations. So it's very useful. Let's take a look with a demo. So into my new database. So about the current alias, current user, I have a little dialogue. I can define a user alias. By default, I'm a designer. So the current user command returns the designer. The current user command allows now an optional parameter with constants. So we can use the 4D user account. So it's the designer. And we can force the current user command to tell us which is who is the alias. So if I set the user alias, I can see that the current user automatically changed and the user, but not the 4D account. So yeah, you can use this way if you use generic users in your application. And if you want to reset the name, you just have to set a user with an empty string, and then the current user is for the user account. So it's very simple. You can see in your development, so the form, I only have a variable and the command. These widgets are binding to the command current user for the user account, current user alias. So it's very simple. And about the get call chain, if I generate an error, I create an error file, and in my error file, I store the error code, the error line, timestamps, and the entire call chain, and the call chain attributes. And I have a collection of each step which generated the error. So it's very useful to know where my error occurred. You can see the method. filter, sorry, the error method. So it's simple, I create an object with my information and my call chain with my get call chain command, and then I store it into a file, another file, with an only line because with a new command folder and the dot notation, you can do it in one line only. It's very, very useful. That's all for us. Thank you for viewing this video session. I hope this will help you with your deployed application and to deploy your applications. So see you soon.